everyone, and thank you all for managing to join the last session of day 2 of the ALPS conference. I'm sure we're all eager to begin to get on to these evening's festivities, but the next half an hour, we are going to talk about one of our, at least, favorite topics, which is licensing developments, trends, and challenges, a bit of a year in review. Citation, attribution, and discovery. These concerns are the bedrock of scholarly publishing, and 2024, and particularly the increasing adoption of AI technologies, has challenged all of our roles and responsibilities in delivering these shared goals and purposes. What is the value of human-authored content in the AI world? Is it all equivalent? As our keynote speaker emphasized, we are the trusted gatekeepers of research outputs, and we all have unique skills in providing reliable content whose provenance is generally understood. These are the skills AI systems desperately need. So how do we maintain our role as responsible stewards for verified content despite the global mix of AI regulations, increasing litigation, etc.? There is no one simple set of answers, but the questions that proper licensing practices ask will help us to navigate these new use cases and novel opportunities, whether they be big or small. From the content supplier or for data training sets, or what we might call rights holders, all the way to the end users of AI systems, we are all dealing with licenses. So how do we foster innovation while sensibly understanding and mitigating the risks? This is not a question we're going to answer in the next 29 minutes here, but what we are going to try to do is scratch the surface of what are some of these challenges that publishers, authors, researchers, and all of the people who support them are facing. So I'm delighted to help in getting us there, to be assisted by the excellent Chris Bennett, who is the commercial director at Cambridge University Press, having just completed 11 years at the renowned education and research publisher. Well done. Before that, he held a variety of roles at Oxford University Press. Chris believes passionately that quality publishing continues to inspire and is relevant and should drive innovation for the benefit of learners, instructors, and researchers alike. He's a leading advocate for rapid yet sustainable model change in open research and online learning, the uptake of adaptive technologies, and the use of data science to inform student and researcher success. We are also super lucky to have with us Will Crook, Head of Policy and Communications at the Publishers Licensing Services. PLS is a non-for-profit collective management organization whose vision is to enable recognition of the value of published works and to provide efficient and effective copyright and licensing solutions and services to support publishers in providing access to content. Also, as platinum sponsors of this entire conference, he's a big reason that we are all here, so thank you, PLS. And finally, my name is Leslie Landsman. I am a director here at ALPS, and I also chair the Public Policy Committee. So, with all of that, let's dig right in and start at the beginning. Where have publishers seen growth in licensing around AI over the past year? What are some of those different types of licensing solutions out there? And perhaps, Will, perhaps you could start us off talking a little bit about the regulatory landscape and perhaps a little bit what's going on the copyright collective management side.
Sure, Leslie. Thank you very much for that highly flattering introduction. So I think with my remarks, I'll probably be concentrating a bit more on the UK, but I think it's worth acknowledging that this is a global thing. And to understand where we are now with AI licensing, it's probably a good idea to work out where it is we came from. So when I joined PLS in December 2021, the first task I was given was to respond to a government consultation on text and data mining and the copyright. And at the time, according to the government, according to the consultation document, the users of content were complaining that licensing was inhibiting innovation in AI, it was too inconvenient, too expensive. With rights holders, I remember in one meeting being told that rights holders were unwilling or refusing to license. I mean, the general line was basically that pesky rights holders and copyright were stopping AI innovation, and should that be removed, then the UK would magically become some AI superpower. Now, in our consultation response at the time, the PLS argued that the licensing market for text and data mining was nascent. It was just emerging, but essentially there was no market failure, and it needed time to evolve and allow licensing models to develop. Now, for some reason, and I'm not sure it's ever really been explained to anybody, the government unsuccessfully tried to introduce an extremely broad exception for text and data mining that was thankfully successfully battered away by the combined might of the UK's creative industries, of which PLS, ALPS and CUP were, I think, all a part of. But from that time till now, it's incredible. We can see it's a completely different picture, I think, when it comes to AI licensing. A lot has happened in quite a short period of time. And now we're seeing a burst of licensing, across different parts of the publishing industry, with variations in licenses from content versus rights packages, for example, and one-off and ongoing, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, there's been various different reasons why I think this licensing has developed or has been helped in its development. I think one reason is we have an improved understanding of the technology, the AI itself. I remember I was talking to you before where we were talking about text and data mining in the conferences a few years ago, where the audience we were talking to didn't really have an in-depth knowledge of what this technology was or what it could even do, even like the pre-ChatGPT days. It seems like a different age almost. So I think publishers now have a better understanding of how their content is being used, where their content is being found. I think that we have a better knowledge of the content that's already been used, often without permission. And I think, as was touched upon, I think a few times in this conference, the need for curated, reliable content has, I think, been is something that's become more and more important over the years. Publishers are now more assertive in protecting their rights. We've seen a lot of litigation in the US, for example. And I think publishers have become more aware of the technology to stop some of the bots and the web crawlers from taking this content illegally. And I think one statistic I heard from the news publishing industry, which is quite interesting, is by the end of last year, 50% of, I think, UK news websites were blocking open AI web crawlers. So there's been this kind of evolution in knowledge, improved knowledge of the tech, and the kind of ways to protect the rights when it comes to licensing. Now, does that mean that everything's fine and everything's sorted when it comes to copyright licensing? I'm afraid not, folks, is the answer to that. And I think Chris here will be giving a lot more detail on some of the open questions they are around this. But I think we are, like I said, I think we're in a completely different place now. I think as I was writing the notes for what I was about to say today, I kind of thought back to that consultation response I was writing and some of the arguments made by the AI sectors. And I think it'd be very difficult for them to make those arguments again, should we ever come to look at exceptions in the future. So the licensing deals on my policy side are being noticed. Sometimes when I go speak to MPs and peers, they ask me questions about the licensing deals they've seen in the paper and what difference is that making. And I think the main message, and which is one PLS put in the original consultation, and we're saying it now, is licensing for AI can happen. It is happening, thankfully, and it works. It shows that copyright is working. So it's good to see that in those years in between, we've kind of improved what we've been saying to the government, and the publishing industry has done well to kind of keep up with the pace of technology. Now, to go to what you were saying about collective licensing, some of the licensing I've been talking about is obviously direct licensing, often done by large publishers. There'll be many publishers, perhaps in this room, maybe small or medium, who'll be considering licensing themselves and the opportunities that might be available. And this is where voluntary collective licensing could be a solution to some of that. Now, collective licensing allows a number of publishers of different sizes to opt in their content to effectively a blanket license. And this makes it vastly convenient, not only for the publisher, but for also the users of that content to obtain one license to copy from a vast range of different bits of content. So also, and this is something we've been stressing to government, voluntary collective licensing has a slightly different effect. It also allows publishers to do direct deals themselves, should it be commercially advantageous, and also allows them to retain the right to maybe not license, should they wish not to license. So it has a lot of different perks to it, I think. It's a good tool to have in our licensing armory, to say. And it's something that PLS has been working with a lot recently, certainly through one of our licensing agents, the Copyright Licensing Agency, who we are a member of. And we're currently developing 3 licenses for AI. The first one is for text and data mining outside the current UK exception. And we're currently having an opt-in campaign on that. So please do stop by our stand if you kind of want more information on that. And the 2 other licenses being developed by the CLA, one is a workplace AI license, and the third one is a license for the training of generative AI models, which isn't covered in the first license, I should add. Now, PLS, in the development of those licenses, obviously we work very hard with the CLA, and we're kind of representing publishers in the negotiations for the creation of those licenses. We're not alone in those negotiations. The CLA has 3 other members, ALCS, who I'm sure many of you are already aware of, the author organization, as well as DAX and Pixel, who represent visual artists and photographers. So, hopefully, once these licenses have been all agreed, we should have potentially 3 licenses, all with the backing of not just publishers, but also authors and visual artists, which we think sends quite a strong message, I think, on that. Now, I should add, it would be disingenuous to say we are the only people doing collective licensing. There are other collective licensing organizations available, one of which, of course, is CCC over in the States, who are doing some sterling work and some important work on collective licensing too. And I thoroughly recommend anybody to read their website and blog. They have some really insightful pieces on that too. So, yeah, I think we're really in a good place. It's very clear that the licensing solutions are coming thick and fast. They're coming in all sorts of shapes and sizes, both direct and collective. And yeah, I think there's much more to come, which I think is probably something we'll be touching on too.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. I think that we have to kind of wake up to the practicalities of the world, as that people are going to have to talk to each other, and how we do this, particularly when it comes to other people using our stuff, is through some type of contract or license. So licensing is definitely happening, which I think we all understand, but the practicalities, as you say, are complex. One of the themes of this entire conference has been research integrity and our specific roles and our incredible pedigree, really, in upholding and trying to always, inspire and achieve greater research integrity checks. So how... It seems that there might be some tension there. There's some problems there. So perhaps you might be able to give us a little bit of insight from your perspective.
Just a little potential problem. So as we've all been discussing, we've just about got comfortable with the concept of text and data mining, and from Cambridge's perspective, that meant non-commercial use, and that used to be a very clear definition for all of us, something that we understood. We had it in our terms and conditions on our platforms, and we were actually at the point just before ChatGPT-4 went live that we were even going to set up an API so that TDM would be altogether easier for researchers based on our very large data sets. ChatGPT-4 changed all of that. That API was never built. We have maintained and enshrined in our T&Cs that right to non-commercial TDM. However, we have made a carve-out for AI licensing from that. We've made a distinction. And we also, after much internal debate, decided that we needed to cover AI licensing as a different license right, to precisely your point, Leslie, about the fact that the rights of authors could so easily be impinged upon through large generative AI data sets being mined and used to produce derivative works. Now, while I'm on that subject, there's another tension that this has created straight away, because as some of you will have heard from me and others earlier, we've been pursuing very actively a move to open access. That's made us a pro-CC BY publisher. However, CC BY licensing gives you the protection only of attribution, and you don't even get that in an AI world where LLM training basically ingests a vast data set, and even some of the tech companies concerned don't know what's coming out the other side of the washing machine that all of your work went into. So you've got a real challenge, because all of a sudden, CC BY, which you as an open publisher were championing, causes potential for real abuse of authors' rights. CC BY NC ND, with the emphasis on ND, non-derivatives, gives you the protections you need, but causes real tension with the proponents of an open future. So straight away we can see that in several respects, the licensing framework that we've got, that we're relying upon and using as publishers, is overnight inadequate to the task, and we are having to play catch up. And of course the implications are vast. That something could be taken completely reworked, using a generative AI engine, that any amount of an author's work, possibly totally unrecognizable, possibly recognizable, could be regurgitated and put back into the system as a derivative, as a fresh journal article, ostensibly as a new piece of research. Those are all possibilities. Now, none of this is to say don't do AI licensing. And something in terms of what we've seen, to Will's point, over the last year, 18 months, these deals have been very well publicized. I tell you what, we're all working on them. Whether people are saying they are or not, we're all working on them. And what we need to do is make sure that we're being really responsible about what we're getting ourselves into, and make absolutely certain that we are protecting our authors' rights. Hence the concept of this being a new license right. So what Cambridge is doing is going out to its author base and soliciting their permission for several specific use cases. So we have further adjustment to our LTP. We have adjustments, addenda to our author contracts for books, and those are allowing us to license for specific use cases with some very clear guardrails for authors for generative AI training, but not for productization. That makes collective licensing also tricky for us, because we have to make sure that what's being allowed through the collective route, and ultimately whatever the EULA is that's in place between the collective licensing agency and the end user, allows for the same level of protection we're putting in place direct, and that, again, we can feel confidence that our authors' rights are being protected in this world. It's by no means straightforward, and again, to points that have already been made, we're learning as we go on this, and it's a moving target. The tech companies themselves are learning at the same time as we are, and we have succeeded in two notable cases, and I'm afraid I can't tell you because of NDAs around those conversations. We've succeeded in two notable cases in getting the AI engines changed, because we insisted on attribution. So there will be a mechanism for attribution on any content set over a particular size, and that size, by the way, is very, very small. A small number of words triggers the need for attribution. So that's just one example of a number of measures that we're putting in place to manage our authors' rights, but still allow this to be possible, because whilst I may have struck a rather gloomy note so far, there are two major opportunities at play here. One is, frankly, revenue, and I've talked today already about the challenges we're facing in our traditional business. So our journals business, for example, goes open, the effect that's going to have on us. Well, there's a possibility here to supplement that revenue for a number of years with a significant new licensing stream, just as traditional journals licensing comes severely under strain. So there's something there, and also, importantly, the importance of discovery for authors. The fact that All our authors are in the business of getting their work out there. Well, there's a huge opportunity to do this and, of course, to benefit, as long as that is done appropriately, from others' work and the machine learning that is offered across a vast data spectrum. That's a massive boon for researchers, but it cannot happen without the checks and balances that I've described. And we have a real role to play in managing that set of things, even though it is causing us tension with some policies, ways of working, procedures that we put in place a few years ago, or perhaps months ago. So there's an awful lot at play here. There are a lot of reasons for doing this. We've got to know to the best possible extent what we're playing with as we get into it.
Yes, I agree. And I think that picking up on what you were talking about, that word responsibility, I think is something we've all thinking more about. How do we exercise our responsibility in the light of AI? And while we've been discussing collective and transactional licenses so far, I think this year, 2024, has also been the year of understanding the importance of terms and conditions. These things that we all just sign up to kind of willy-nilly up until now, suddenly people are really looking at them. There are people out there who have EULA watches where they update you with alerts every time a certain end-user license changes its terms. And I think likewise, publishers have done quite a good job of trying to rise to some of those challenges. If any of you aren't aware, for example, the STM organization has created the STM Text and Data Mining Reservation Protocol, which is quite an easy tool that you can attach on a web page or a content page and allows publishers or rights holders to exercise those rights, to make it clear what they do and do not want to be done to their content. Kind of outside of those types of things, though, and looking a little bit holistically at what has happened in 2024 so far, where are we now? Where are we, and what do you see perhaps happening in 2025? Will, perhaps you'd like to give us a few minutes of your thoughts?
Well, I've always tried to avoid kind of making any predictions. Certainly in politics, is kind of obviously I do a lot of policy work, and I think maybe in tech I'm probably not the person to ask either. But I mean, I think if we're going to talk about on the regulatory side, I think certainly in the UK, the relationship between copyright and AI is still on the agenda for the new government. And actually, next week, there will be a round table between some of the rights holder representative groups and the new IP minister, Phil Clark, and the new creative industries minister, Sir Chris Bryant. I think, ostensibly, just to get a feel of what the creative industries' thoughts are on AI and some of the threats to copyright, etc. I don't think there's been much kind of clue as to which direction that might go in. I mean, the Labour Party said some very positive things about copyright in the manifesto, but I think in power it might be a different matter. So I can't really guarantee that we won't see another perhaps proposed exception, whatever kind of form that might take. It won't be as extreme as the last proposal, I can guarantee that, but that hasn't really gone away so much. Towards the end of the previous governments, around about in the springtime, there was talk of them looking at an EU-style copyright exception with the kind of an added kind of gift of AI regulation around transparency. Obviously, that didn't really come to fruition for obvious reasons, but that issue is still kind of ongoing. Is the new government more sympathetic to us or the rights holders? I can't say for sure, but I was in a discussion with a policy advisor, I think last week, who was mentioning about the BBC and all the great content they have that they should perhaps be selling to AI companies in the future. We shouldn't be giving away the family jewels, etc. And basically what he's talking about was licensing, which you kind of wanted to scream at them when they were saying at the time. But that, I took that as a kind of optimistic kind of an optimistic thing to see that at last they're talking about licensing in positive terms, kind of away from the usual language about finding balance, etc. Now, on AI regulation, over the next year, we have the EU AI Act, so we might start seeing some of the effects of that, both in the UK and as well, obviously, in the EU. In terms of AI regulation in the UK, I think there was a bit of surprise and a bit of disappointment that an AI bill wasn't included in the King's speech. There was some kind of vague promise to some kind of regulation at some point over the next parliamentary year. But there has been a bit of movement since. Matt Clifford is working on an AI opportunities plan, and we think there should be some kind of consultation on AI regulation or an AI bill coming out at some point towards the end of the year. But we shall see on that. Again, the government's language is really regulation for a small, a few AI, the most powerful AI companies, I think, is the wording of it. So there's still kind of an open question over all of this. I'm sorry, folks. But I think there's going to be still a general push for the UK to be an AI superpower. Again, in the conversation I had with the policy advisor, he said, well, there's no big UK AI player out there. So I think that will be in the front and center, I think, of a lot of the government's thinking on this over the next year. There's going to be a large international AI summit in France, which I believe copyright is actually on the agenda for in November this year. And I think, as I was told, I'm not sure if this is true or not, but as I was told, it was because President Macron feels that the AI landscape at the moment is too Anglo-centric. So the French are getting a bit concerned that everything's in English rather than in any alternate language. And of course, as we discussed at London Book Fair, it's the year of elections. And we have a rather big election coming up towards the end of the year, which may have some pretty big consequences on AI regulation and everything we've been discussing today in terms of licensing. So, yeah, no bold predictions from me, but a lot to kind of look at and focus on over.
At least you'll be busy.
Yeah, okay. Stay optimistic would be.
And Chris, what is on your mind for 2025? Or perhaps what might you tell anyone who might be looking at any kind of AI license? What would you say to them?
Well, on the first part of that question, it's interesting, isn't it? When you're dealing with Silicon Valley, innovation pushes the envelope as far as possible in one direction. Rights holders and regulation kind of wind that back a bit. We come to a point in the middle where we have a meeting that works. I think 2025 will be the year of the meeting that works. And there'll be some getting houses in order accordingly. That means that we will see some more large-scale licensing deals. And as I've said already, we do need to make sure that the interests of our rights holders remain paramount when those deals are done. So expect more controversy in this industry to come in this year as those things work their way through. And just before that regulatory framework gets itself established, I think. So that's my big prediction. In terms of piece of advice, do it, but do it consciously. Leslie made a really good point about T&Cs. This industry has always stood or fallen on how good its contractual frameworks are. And too few people read the small print. So make sure that you have considered the implications. I hate to give any of our excellent collective licensing agencies an individual plug, but they do know a lot about this. They can help. And if you have them, turn to your in-house counsel as well to make sure that you are covered, because the terms and conditions, your LTPs, your author contracts may not be geared up for this world, and you need to make sure that they are by yesterday.
Will, any last words?
Well, I totally echo what Chris has just said there. But seriously, I mean, I think from my point of view, actually since joining PLS, I'm talking to the converted perhaps here, but I mean, joining a trade association, using all the resources, the excellent resources that trade associations have. I mean, we have the policy committee, there's an AI special interest group. You know, there may be some publishers out there who may be kind of struggling to keep pace with all the changes that are happening quite so quickly in a lot of the terminology. There are these great groups, so the policy group, for example, where we have kind of almost weekly updates on what's happening, not just in the UK, but across the world, the UK, US, EU, etc. And you know, there's a group of experts all in there, all willing to help. You know, I think it's a fantastic resource, and I totally encourage everybody to use it. to help you understand the world of licensing and AI.
And as are both of you. So thank you both for helping us navigate some of these complexities. It is an interesting time for sure, and I think read the license is perhaps one of the best takeaways that we can have. So thank you, thank you.